Hey, good afternoon, folks. It's 4 o'clock, and this is the condensed teaching order, 12 weeks, and we're glad that you're here with us, and we're trying to make things happen. That's our theme. So, in that regard, we have with us Mr. Bill Harrison, our panelist. Let's give him a nice hand for being here. Maryland. And myself, Tim Marriner. No, please. No, please. Bill and I have been working over 10 to 15 years together in putting together various different methods of teaching. And we happened across this notion of willing or wanting or the need to teach in a shorter frame time. And we experimented quite a few different ways. We went within the system to try to get the new teach order designed within CALLERLAB, and we got a few things changed. And a few of the calls listed were moved and modified, circulate for one, and sooner and later in others. And yet still we weren't satisfied that enough was being done. We pushed and helped internally during the drop add season for the triennials to try to get things removed, and to no avail. So we're at the point where, again, that 20-80 rule, 20% wanting to do stuff and make things happen, trying to move the other 80% who really don't give a darn. Or maybe they just don't want anything to happen or change. So we still continued on with the teaching condensed notion of having to teach in a shorter time frame. While this was going on, Blast Class and other things, fast tracks, and then the new initiative ideas came about, and that it was okay to experiment in how and methods and forms of teaching, and other things. So we continued on with that, and Elmer Sheffield Jr. at the time was chairman, who said, guys, I know you're working on this. He had a group at the time where he applied some of the things that we were doing, and he obtained the same amount of success that we were getting. And he said, let's pursue that somehow. So our first slide, again, is Bill has put together, is again this historical perspective of where we are today. Elmer contacted ACA, which was fairly controversial, to see about maybe together we could come up with a method of this condensed order. Two fellows got involved, and we worked over a year to come up with ways of doing this. And then as we got to the final stages of it, they decided they wanted to pursue their own methods and ways. So about February or so, ACA came out with a condensed teach order plan. And there were a few modifications that were on their list that we had done at the time. Since then, we've continued on with the ad hoc group. Barry and the EC asked us to finish this up the way we had originally had planned, and so we did so. And we decided to not only enhance it a little bit or change it, modify it, but we also added supportive documents and materials that would be better to assist folks if they decided they wanted to pursue it. So that's a bit of a historical perspective of what we've done to this point. Bill has the wireless here, so anything you want to jump in and say or add to, you know you're welcome. What you have in your hands now are the 12 sessions. Now, 12 is just a number. It could be that it goes 15 for you. It could be people have weeks where they're all going to be gone, and you have to modify how you do that. So 15, again, is just a suggestion, or 12 is a suggestion. So we took together the most danced actions and arrange them in a manner where some of the mainstream calls are sooner than later than as the current list, where let's say recycle's the last on the list. A dancer in a standard class today would get out and recycle being the last thing they were taught, not have enough tries at recycle to feel comfortable doing recycle in an open dance yet. In this method, recycle sooner. Some of those things are sooner, so that the more difficult actions might be intertwined in the middle, where by the end there are some easier ones. And we had a design teaching order principles that several callers back had suggested to do just that. So what you see here is the results of the ad hoc's work, and you have it in your hands. Circles, all these things, tags, hinges. We grouped some things together. Touch a quarter, hinge. You can almost put in left touch a quarter right after that, because if they know the concept of what touch and go a quarter is, they can certainly do it left-handed. And it doesn't take too much time to have to show that again. Or just say, hey, what can be done right can be done left, so let's go on and try the left-hand touch and go a quarter. Now you're already touched. Let's just do, we call this a hinge, because you're already, so you see how some of the things come.
Yes, and also when it says, like, for example, run or circulates, that's all of them. That's split circulate, in circulate, center circulate, all 8 circulate, so forth. Runs, boy run, girl run, center run, in runs, so forth like that.
Your session 1 is fairly logical, because there's a lot of things that you can teach, and you know that they're very absorbent the first week at a lesson plan, and you have plenty of weeks to go back and review those simpler functions or some of the fundamentals. You see an oddity there is wheel around, but that's a kind of a useful thing to do when from a promenade setup, and also if they're not doing courtesy turn per se, which isn't, you don't see courtesy turn listed. It's sort of implied that it's a part of ladies chain and right and left through, but it's not a separate listed call. Okay. Square through on session 6. We're not just teaching square through from a standard application. We're teaching the concept of how to do the action square through, where you're pulling by or turning into the box, pulling by, alternating hands, going around the building, and at the end of it, you're all looking out of the building back to back, however many hands it takes. And once they get the idea of that, they can do it from sachet boxes. They don't know it's hard. It's the same thing. You just have to turn into the building and keep going around the building. You get 4 guys together, it's the same thing. 4 girls together, it's the same thing. The only people that might know that that's difficult are your angels. They might say, well, that's really hard stuff. Hey, let's do the same thing, but start it with your left hand now. And they can do that. They'll give that to you. If they understand the concept of how you teach what a square through is, they can give it to you however way you show it and give it to them and provide it for them. So we suggest to teach thoroughly, but it doesn't mean we're doing it DBD all the time. But we are teaching conceptually. If we Ferris wheel from a right-hand two-face line, we can also do it from a left-hand two-face line, and from sashayed two-face lines, and vice versa, for however way you go, right or left. Boys together, girls together. But the idea that this is the concept of what a Ferris wheel action is. And yet, so there's some of the items that Bill has on these slides.
Yes. And once again, some of the stuff that are on here in our regular program that we do all the time are kind of intuitive. You don't have to really teach, I wouldn't think, somebody how to do a left touch a quarter. I don't think you have to physically just say this is, it's kind of easy to do by going back and forth. Square through, same thing. I don't teach left square through. I teach them how to square through. And then I say, we do a left square through. You start with your left, and everything else is the same.
Alternate hands.
So I don't have to spend time in teaching that particular way of doing a square through if I've done the square through properly.
And if Bill will back up one slide, you see that we have veers, bend the lines, trades. that includes the biggest of trades to the smallest of trades. And what are they? Couples trades. And then you have ends trade first, because that's the bigger one. Then you have centers trade. You have the disconnected trades where you have, say, from standard lines facing out, boys trade, girls trade, because they're not connected, which is bigger than the partner trade, which is the smallest of the trades. Okay, so you work big to small. They understand what a concept of trade is, and it's fairly easy to show trades.
You also notice on here, you'll see wheel and deal, but you'll see it from lines facing out, I believe.
Yes.
Okay? When we first talked about this last year, we don't see wheel and deals as often anymore from two-phase lines. What do you see more often? Exactly. So the thought was to give that same feel, if I walked into a mainstream hall somewhere, could I call this program and make it feel like it's a full mainstream program? And I can tell you the answer is yes. It feels just like that. Mm-hmm. Even though some of those calls that you're not seeing aren't there, they're really at a point not that necessary because of the way we've called today, how it's changed. Okay.
You see the action slide through is listed early, but not star through. And the reason for that is most of our dancers are older, and they have shoulder issues or things they can't raise, what we call armpit calls, which would be dive-throughs, California twirls, box the nats, those dance actions. And so the slide-through, when taught early enough, the dancers don't know, hey, that's way more difficult than star-through. They don't know the difference. All they know it is as a pass and turn. And you can directionally, as Bill and I have chatted about, say you can work your way up to that. Pass through, boys turn right, girls turn left. Pass through. And then later say, hey, let's call that slide through. They know that on a slide they turn. On a pass you don't. You go right by people. And you have hand availability, you discussed, that you keep your hands in a six-gun position. When they turn the corner, that hand's there, and it's not a problem. And they don't know that they're missing the call star through. Now, all of this lends to, at the end of the 12 or 15 weeks, or however many condensed weeks you have, or sessions you do, when they go into the club atmosphere, the club dancers don't know what's missing. The club dancers feel like they're square dancing. Recycles being done, spin the tops being done, cloverleafs being done, square throughs from multiple different hands and arrangements.
Swing through.
Swing throughs being done.
Spin the top.
Spin the top, we said.
Tag the line.
Tag the lines, half tags, flutter wheels. It feels like what you're dancing now. Nobody has ever come up to Bill and I in 15 years and said, you haven't used spin chain through tonight. I want my money back. Okay? And yet you'll see that Alamo rings are there, but not thars. Okay, so some of these things are what we call deferred. You can maybe teach them later at your dances as workshop items throughout the rest of the next however long it takes. But the dancers are getting the live experience of singing calls, the community group, the fun, the thrill of it all, not in a classroom environment for 30 weeks to a year. And you're teaching things workshop-ish wise at the dances, one or two tips, and focusing them all night or maybe 2 weeks that you're doing. And what we are finding as a net result are more proficient dancers, more confident dancers, and we're not greasing the skids or the slid to go right on up into plus now. What we're doing is getting these folks involved in the activity in a shorter amount of time so that they have 12 weeks and they can now just jump right in. That gives you the chance or an opportunity to have maybe as many as 3 cycles of this, possibly, in a year, as opposed to once.
Okay, anybody who has a question, welcome to do it. Make sure you say your name, where you're from, all your bank accounts. So, just kidding.
Are you kidding? You are already into my wallet every summer. Virgil Forbes out of Maryland. Just as an aside, for my own personal information, for the last couple of months I've been working on, for lack of a better word, let's call it a frequency count of calls contained in singing calls. And thus far I've got about 800 singing calls in the database. I've got about 400 more to go. And the only thing, high frequency of the stuff I've been analyzing thus far, that's not on here is the 8-chain through family. But of all the high frequency calls in singing calls, everything else is here.
Right. And Virgil, here's the thing we had. We had some point in time we had to cut and say what's left. We know that 8-chain 4 is very popular in singing calls. We know that. Very rare at a square dance, at an open dance, do you just hear 8-chain through?
Correct.
Which is sad because it's a great call, and it takes plenty of time to do, and it's just a big zero, kind of like relay the deucey, and what have you. But the idea that there was some point in time where we had to figure out what could be deferred and easily taught later. A star through, astonishingly enough, is very easy to teach later. California twirl, dive throughs. If you need those, you can teach those later. Now, the reason we put the caveat, if you need it, there's some folks that might be in a vacuum area where what they're teaching or doing won't affect anyone else because they're in such a remote region that no one's going to know it's missing. Nobody from the outside world can come in. And it happens in situations where you have closed clubs. And there are groups that do exist in that manner. There are clubs that don't allow outside people to come in through their gates because they're in a development or a community. And in that situation, they're in a vacuum and what have you. So they could do this, learn this. The problems are they can't go out to the other regions and dance full mainstream yet until they're exposed to the rest of the material. Okay, if that's available in the region. So if it is, and you wish to dovetail this into your current existing groups, it's easily done over the next 2 months or however long it takes for you to teach those other 15 or 20 things that you might find missing.
Yeah. I think we came up with about 19 of them.
19 or something.
I think it's like 19, so.
So
okay.
There's a few questions on the floor as we go.
There is.
All of these handouts that we have here are on your thumb drive, by the way, and we also have further ones here up front. We'll describe those as we go.
Don Thompson, Paradise, California. I see this is not an actual application question, but more a legislative question, I guess. What kind of planning or look ahead do you have to dealing with the conflict between this and the official mainstream list? Kind of a documentation, communication issue.
I think that this is just a way of getting people to, the door as far as once they're in and you can teach them in 12 to 15 weeks. If you already, like again, I think Tim said it earlier, if you have an existing group, you can take those right in. If you can get your club to work with you, take them right in, and they would feel like they're dancing the mainstream program, and each week you can introduce whatever the calls happen to be that are left over. Okay? If you're in a perfect world, and you don't have to intermingle them with what we already have, boy, this is really a super little thing that you could just say, I'm done with, I've stopped here, and that would be ideal. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but if the future does bring something similar to this, we already now have it, and it can always be tweaked. It can be changed a little bit, but even the people that are now in this room who are looking at what we've already have, so far I haven't heard a whole lot like, geez, I'm sad this isn't on there. So far, that's a good sign. So I hope I answered that question.
It's also possible that if more people were to practice or to experiment with this notion or idea, and they got the same success rate that Bill and I are doing, that more people would get involved with it and try it. In that respect, with more people on board trying it, there's a better chance that when we have these triennial reviews, that we might lose some of that material that's not on here, because everybody's kind of happy with just what this is. There's 49 subset of calls out of what we have right now that's mainstream. That would be an ideal situation in my respect. Most people that I talk to they're wanting less material because it's taking too long to teach. Today's people in society want things instantly. You tell them you got to take lessons for a year, they're going to sign up for something else, just walk away. And then the other side of the coin, which is really tough, is they'll take lessons with you for a whole year, and then at the end of the lessons, they get a diploma and never come out to dance because they just don't feel confident enough. There's too much stuff. If you have to teach the 68 or 69 calls as we have now in a 30-week course, a lot of times dancers come out fairly not being confident. Let's just put it that way. Incompetent is not the right word, but they just don't feel confident.
My name is Arlene Kaspick. I'm from the Chicago metro area. And I applaud the list. I had the mixed blessing of being involved in an experiment in the Chicago area with a club that adopted, and we've had two versions of and I think the lists came from ACA at that point. In the fall we worked with one, in the winter we worked with another. First of all, I fully support everything that has been said here today about people can't commit to 9 months, or if they do, they're exhausted at the end and still don't feel like they're decent dancers. Two things that were said that I just want to emphasize is that either A, this works, well, the list works beautifully, and they look like dancers, they're having a good time, it's high energy. But it works best if either, as you said earlier, you are starting a new club, and you know, you're not going to do banner rage, you're not going to, you know, it'll work for most student dances, but not always, at least in the Chicago metro area, because, you know, they are missing some of the calls. The other thing is that if you try something like this, with an existing club, it is critical that the club leadership buys into it and that the club dancers are willing to support it. We had a situation where there was an ad hoc committee that ran the classes. Classes were run through a park district. Worked beautifully. And then we thought, okay, we're just going to sort of quietly work this into dances. You know, the whole club was not sold on this. And we had people who were really very angry at club dances. And then the club leadership said, well, unless they're dancing full plus, we just don't want them as members. You know, so just please try it, embrace it, do it with your eyes open. I think part of our problem was that the ad hoc committee that adopted the list and adopted the approach heard what they wanted to hear, but didn't quite hear the whole picture.
Right.
And what they were able to do is obviously have 2 entry points. If we choose to teach year-round, there could be 3.
Right. So, Arlene, in the principal paper that is documented on the thumb drive you have, and that's up front here, and we have a slide on it too, in the principal paper it describes just that, where there has to be a destination for these folks. And if the club isn't willing to support that, whatever the destination is, you should do no business teaching, in my opinion. And we know that there are plus groups out there that are trying to get new people quick, and then they're not happy afterwards because they're not as proficient as they are because they've got 5 years experience, and here's somebody coming in after 30 weeks and they still can't scoot back, or they're still having trouble with Dixie style or whatever it is, and they don't want them in their square. They shun them. These people are just very vulnerable at that point in time, usually quit. Say, hey, this isn't fun. I'm frustrated and I'm not happy. And so they leave to take up something that is fun. And so this is trying to avoid that problem.
Gary Felton, Maryland. One of the things implicit in here is that we, as callers, teachers, are going to have to be good at calling and teaching. We're going to have to learn to teach concepts, not a whole bunch of variations of the same call. Trade from the little to the big is teaching about 7 different calls. Trade from the big to the little is teaching a concept. And we're going to have to learn to do that.
And taking a outfacing line and saying couples trade is big. That's a big thing. Once they understand what a couples trade is, and they understand now, hey, there's a right shoulder passing rule, then the idea of later teaching wheel and deal's a piece of cake. It's not as foreign to them. You see, they know that the folks on the left end of that line have to take a big step forward to do the trade in order to pass right shoulders. We have 2 questions when you get it.
Jim Osborne, Northern California, San Francisco area. How many years have you been doing this or something similar, and what kind of results have you had of integrating it into the local community that doesn't dance this low? Obviously, these people cannot go to an open mainstream dance, and though you could go to a mainstream dance and call this, it's backwards. And I think the idea is great,
yes.
But how to keep the all the rest of the callers and the rest of the community have the warm fuzzies? What kind of results have you had?
So there's 2 things in the principal paper. You can do it on your own, and then these dancers can't go anywhere till they learn the rest of the system, till they learn those other remaining calls. That's one way. Or you can go and have a group of clubs get together and try it, or a group of callers in your region do the same thing at the same time and start it, and then they can form these little midway dances and share because they're all on the same page, as you say, doing these calls. And we have had success doing that. I have one group on Mondays, and I've doubled the size of my group. Now, that sounds braggadocious, but going from 2 squares to 4 squares is a big deal now. Okay? That's a big deal. Now, I have a Monday group. We've been pushing uphill to get this work. We're doing this, and it's worked that way. I have a Tuesday group, and over 15 years, we have 80 couples involved now.
Yeah, and that was based on, before the Tuesday group was based on a 20-week that we put together many years ago, which was through the PPI of the CALLERLAB Association. When they, remember, I don't know if you guys remember when they took away basic and just made it all mainstream. And so we had to come up with giving some ideas, and Tim and I worked on a program that we still use today, and we have plenty of other people who are using it. It's a 20-week program, and we have these things that are called, and it depends on your attendance. It might end up being 25 weeks. Okay, all that is part of the game. But essentially, if you were in a perfect world and everybody was there every night, 20 weeks, and we've done it that way too, in 20 weeks, and all the non-essential calls that we deferred later on, we took the class and just taught it in the club atmosphere. And each night we taught 1 or 2 of those movements, which took about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Because of all of the stuff they had prior, all we did was tack a name onto what they already kind of knew. And it was just amazing to watch, and they were complete, that whole mainstream program. But
if I could follow up, Jim, on one other comment. When the outside clubs saw what was going on, and in 12 weeks or 15 weeks it took for me this last time through, they saw the group double in size. They looked at this and they said, they're more than welcome to come out to my Wednesday group and practice some more. I provided them the calls, and they're calling to them now. And there was a Thursday group who said, wow, that's 4 squares of people that I could have come to my group too. And they were very happy in modifying somehow to get them involved. So the other clubs see some potential in getting dollar signs because they might have more chances or frequency of dancing. So they're adapting to it, and I didn't even try.
Tom Stone, I have a multi-phase question. First of all, when you did this the first couple of times, how many weeks did it actually take for you to do this? Was it the number of sessions we see, or did it take longer? And how did that work? That really work out? Did it take 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 14 weeks? And then I have another question.
The answer to that is there were about 4 other groups across the country, actually one in Canada, I believe, also, that adopted what we did last year at convention, okay? And they worked off what we had last year. We kept in close contact to see how these groups were working. In most cases, it did not happen in 12 weeks. And the reason being was because their students weren't there every week.
They weren't committed.
They weren't committed. They would be there 2 weeks, miss 2 weeks, a variation of some type of missing where they had to go back and re-catch up and so forth like that. But now, let me backtrack just a second. Last year, we came up with what you're looking at right now, okay? Basically, session 1 through session 12. All this other information that you see up here was what we did with our first program 15, 17 years ago. And now we incorporated that in because the EC had asked us to move forward with doing more documentation. So now any caller, anybody, is going to have a wealth of information of how to use this. But not only that, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we have choreography that goes along with it. We have 12 weeks of 2 couple and 4 couple. Each one has 5 sequences. So even dancers, and this is Tim's have folks to do it as well, can take these home and practice. They got 2 couples of friends. They can go and just read the information to practice whatever they had. Each week has this, okay? So this is the extent that we've gone with just this thing. And we have a condensed teaching, the checkoff list. We provided that too, based off the CALLERLAB, okay?
Right.
So you can do that as well.
If I can jump in, Tom, to answer your question, in my particular situation, it took me 15 weeks because we had the holiday break. And we had some situations we couldn't get started the day we needed to start because of availability of room. And then we had this holiday break where we take, between the Christmas and New Year's, those 2 weeks off and come back. There were snow problems, issues with weather problems. So we had probably 3 weeks where we had to stop. So when they came back, it took longer than 12 weeks. It took us 15. But it was still condensed enough that we were able to get in, if that answers that question. You have a second part to your question?
Yeah, Tom Sellner from Maryland. The reason I ask is because I started teaching and I only had 17 calls when I first started. So I went through, have taught every number of basics over the years, including the basic 75 when we had that and everything. So I've experimented. And I used to teach 2 or 3 classes a year because I taught at a university. And so I learned that this is what happened. I learned that as we were adding calls, that it turned out that once we went past the 20-week, and it doesn't matter about the number of calls, it's just number of teaching sessions, that once you passed 20, it became a problem for everybody except maybe 1% of your class. The ability for them to go out and then do the dancing, but when you just added an extra week after the 20, went down significantly. And I have plenty of data to do this because I did this for years, over years. I've been calling for 50 years, as you know. And so I've done every session, every kind of version of this that you want to know, and I found out. So my question really is now, if we do this, would you be able to, in say, what would be 2 college semesters, could you teach everything that you wanted to in 20 weeks, or would it take longer? You know what I'm saying? If you're adding the extra stuff, as you went on, you know what I mean? Would it work in 20 weeks, or would it take longer? You know what I'm saying?
I'm hearing what you're saying, but it doesn't matter how long it takes, because they're integrated now in dancing, and then at the end of the 12 weeks, which is 3 months, that was when ACA and CALLERLAB had that joint meeting, and we've had this ad hoc. We said, where do we want to go? 15 weeks? Well, if we can do it in 15 weeks, well, we certainly can. Originally was 20, and then it shrunk down to 10, and we said, well, how about a 3-month period? There's where the magic number of 12 really came about. Can we do it in 12 weeks? And so we got our heads together and said, what can we teach that will work in that parameter in a perfect world? This is the perfect world scenario you see and you have in your hands on the board. When you have people missing so many weeks, or they're on a cruise, they're going to be gone, they're torn for 2-3 weeks, there now becomes an issue. Do I go back and workshop just for them to bring them up to par? Will I miss them? Or sacrifice that they're going to have to take this over? Or do we find a means outside of this that they can learn on their own? And this is where we provided the supportive material where they can practice what they have missed on their own. So, Bill, if you'll slide up, you have, this is the checkoff list. And there's 2 pages of that up here. It's a front and back page. And then we have, after that, we have, this is the principle. Let's keep going past that. And we have, then there are the abbreviated definitions, and they're going to be, and they are provided for you on the thumb drive, and they're documented per session. All the items that are in those sessions, they're split up that way. So the if week number 7, the next one.
This will be the beginning, and this is session 1.
Session 1 has all the calls that are in session 1 together on the abbreviated definitions. So the dancers can have the 2-couple work or the 4-couple work, and they can take on their own and try to review and get caught up. And they have the definitions that they can work and walk and try to work it. Or I have to provide a little extra workshop, half hour or so, to get them up to speed. You do that now, don't you? In your standard lesson plans. All right. We have to figure a way to do that too in this situation, in that scenario, because people do travel and have other lives. So.
Joe Gonzalez, Clovis, California. You mentioned that you had a Monday and Tuesday night group, and then a Wednesday and a Thursday they find out about the group. Do they stall your dancers, or do they dance? Do they call to their level?
Yes. Here's the. I don't own any dancers. The more frequency that they go out and dance places, the better they'll be, and the more apt that they're going to help the region totally. I'm not just being selfish and helping me. When I teach somebody, I'm thinking those people are going to travel and go to all the different regions and state events throughout that area or region, state, what have you. And so if somebody else sees dollar signs and wants to invite these folks, and they have the program that I've provided them, and they can call and don't abuse them, those people feel comfortable and want to come back. Now the frequency of dance isn't once a week. It might be 3 times a week. And they come back to me the next week, and we're doing some more dances and teaching, and I'm helping, and they become better. All right? So if that answers your question, it is very supportive in that way.
Don Beck from the island of Martha's Vineyard off of Massachusetts. And that's pertinent to what I'm going to say later. First of all, I really applaud the concept. I've been thinking of it for years. Back when the CDC program was brought into thing, I thought this was going to happen. And then they went in a different direction. They sort of headed more towards the traditional. And so I started thinking, what can we do? What I think is one of the things that has sold our product back in the heyday was dancing to semi-modern music, wind in your face, not sure what's coming in choreography, variety, not difficulty, puzzle solving set to music, etc. And people love that. They just don't love the months and months of preparation to get into it, etc. So I came up with eventually a 10-lesson plan. Some guy approached me about teaching a group of his people in an isolated area. He knew what Western was, and he didn't want to get back into it. He was doing traditional. So he was fully following. He provided people. He provided a hall. And we taught for 10 weeks a lesson that I came up with a list that would give the look and feel of modern Western calling, dancing, without the calls that aren't called very often, spin chain through a bunch. My list overlaps yours maybe only 70%. You know, we have differences of opinions of what ones are necessary and what aren't. You know, some of the ones that are necessary because I like to call them, you know. Some of the ones that aren't because I never call them anyway. My feeling was not to integrate this group into the rest of the world. But if an outsider came in to dance with us, they wouldn't know things were missing. At the time, I was also calling at MIT weekly for the Tech Squares, where we had a 13-week program that made very advanced plus dancers at the end of 13 weeks. I knew how to organize my lessons and how to make good dancers. One tip per week at Tech Squares, I would use my 10-week list. Nobody knew the difference. So it had the look and feel. It accomplished that. The class went well, except due to circumstances beyond my control, we couldn't get enough people for a second session, but the 10 weeks went fine. I moved to, and again, my theory was not to create something that will eventually make mainstream dancers, to create something that will replace mainstream dancers, because they're going to live in a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to grow. When I moved to the laboratory of Martha's Vineyard, unaffected by outsiders, plus dancers or mainstream, I had this great idea I was going to start a new group that way. Only instead of 10 weeks, I came up with a 3-week program that had the look and feel of Western dancing. And the object is that the first Wednesday of every month, we start a new group. And the fourth and possibly fifth Wednesday of every month, we dance. And after we have a few groups going, maybe we'll do an extra half hour for the ones that have danced regularly. To keep variety, we will teach some of the other mainstream calls, but not teach them. We'll use them one per night as an disposable experimental. When we play with it, but tell them to not worry about it. You know, they may be tried and true that I know, but we're having fun with it tonight, and it'll fit into the program we have. Now, one of my strong shortcomings, in my contradicting myself, is organization. And I have gotten a few groups sort of started. On this 3-week session, we got 2 weeks into one of them before illness took some people out. And boy, I could see the clicking already in how they liked the ad lib and everything else. I've got another venue we're going to try again, somebody organizing for me in the fall, and we'll give it a try. But what I really have been hoping some years to be able to come and say, we've been doing this 3-week program. Outsiders come in when they visit the island, and they think it's square dancing, because it is. But these guys don't know that there are other goals to go to, and we'll worry about that in 10 years when they're starting to saturate. But the principle, again, here is beautiful.
Thank you. I think that's, especially with your MIT work, you have a younger set of dancers involved there. And in today's world, we have mostly still recruiting older dancers, so they can't do it in 3 or 10 weeks and what have you. But this is still obtainable. They don't feel overwhelmed, per se, by the amount of the material because there's less. And so we're still getting the success right now. Some of you have heard also maybe of the Nest. All right, these are other teaching approaches that are being utilized that in the same vein that Don just said, every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, however it is, they'll start another group. Only the Nest, they do it in the same room, and then you just keep going on and they progress around the room. But they also have supportive work material, and they have trainers or educators, that are facilitators in this case, that will orate the calls and get people to walk and dance through those dance actions. Okay, so in this respect, we do have that if they wish to utilize it with the 2-couple and the 4-couple actions. Tom, follow up? Okay.
Just make a quick rebuttal to one. The group the 3-week program that I have planned is not for MIT type people.
No,
it's for real people.
Yes.
It's really short, but by
I understand.
But by picking the right calls and dropping a whole bunch that it really hurts to drop,
yes,
you can still have the look and feel of modern Western for the rest of us.
That's right.
Dave Brown, Merced, California. I heard you say the methodology. Do you have materials on the methodology from the big to the small, and is that in this material, or it's piqued my curiosity.
That's actually in a teaching design principle. There's a teaching document that you might want to look into. At CALLERLAB, you can go right to the website and go through some teaching documents. I think that's probably, I can't think of the name of it right now, but there are some written documents on that.
Can we push ahead through the rest of this real quick? Is that possible? I mean, all right. Yeah, okay. All righty, good. Well, also back here you saw that there's the, if I can get it. Let's see, is this it? The principles, okay? So there's the condensed teaching order principle. As you can see, it's a couple of pages. All righty. So we have that, and it mentions an awful lot. The blast, the multi-cycle, all kinds of different things. Okay. Again, all of this material you already have on your thumb drive, but also it's recorded as well. We do have papers up here as well. Okay. But then going forward, we have the abbreviated definitions. So we correlate it each week with all of that available to you. Okay. And also you can provide that to your lesson people as well, that they can take and read. Also on here, let's see as we go through this, that was just the first week. We have teaching order hints, okay? So we took each session, as you can see, circle left, and it gives you A, B, C, D. And these are some for you. If you want to use them, you have your own, of course. But if you happen to have somebody that is newer and you're working with them, here's some places they can go, forward and back. And it has all session 1, and these are all teaching hints as well. That's provided in this whole package, okay? We have a quick start guide, okay, how to use the choreography. And it tells you, Tim, would you like to? Okay, so it has everything right there for the taking. Just got to read a little bit, your sequences, how to practice them. Again, we talked about each session has 2 couple, 4 couple sequences, 5 each, okay?
I can add one
Yes.
thing into that. If you back up, there's some people might not be understanding or aware what mini square is. So you kind of have to describe what it is. You know, you're working as head couples. You're couple number 1 and couple number 3. Here you are, and you can practice those items and actions. And it says, hey, look, don't argue. How do you work with a group? Don't argue. Let somebody be the director. Don't push anybody into position. Look up. If you have any questions or if something doesn't work, then skip it and bring it to the attention to the leader or the caller later, and let them go back and describe that or practice it with you or explain it to you then. And even if it's the 2 or the 4 couple actions, and they're designed, written in a degree of difficulty. The
Yes.
first one is kind of standard. The second one is going to be a little bit squirrely, maybe left-handed. And then the third one down through whatever those calls are, you find are going to be a little more technical. And the last one could be rather difficult.
Yeah, for example, like, we tend to use past the ocean more so from lines facing, okay? So in this choreography here, when you come to pass the ocean, it may be from a 0 box, okay? That kind of usage. Same thing with the other calls as well. So it gives you that variety to also maybe force you in to making a little bit of change in your choreographic thinking as well, okay? And so it goes here. This is the 2 couple practice, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah? And then we have the 4 couple practice. So some of them are 4, some of them are 5.
Look at the last one.
The last one reads sides, do-si-do, sides, right-hand star, back out at home, heads, circle 4 halfway, sides, promenade halfway, everybody Alamana left, right and left grand, swing and promenade, all wheel around, and wrong way, promenade home. So it's we're not doing this to be just, quote, vanilla, if that's the right word that we're looking at. We want you to be able to take these calls and use them in various ways, okay? And so that's a key. So some of this choreography is designed that way. Okay.
And wheel around, for example, is one that you will always use from a promenade setup. But then we forget to use it from out-facing couples, say from squared set heads or sides, or from the trade-by setup where you can have the outsides wheel around and let's have the centers do something else. Or everybody wheel around, or from two-face lines, out-facers wheel around. How about standard, this is nothing standard, but from a boy-boy, girl-girl line facing out, centers wheel around and ends run. Where does that leave you? Quicker. From lines facing out, boy-boy, girl-girl line, centers wheel around, ends run. What do you have? Standard facing lines.
Yep.
Okay, a standard facing line, which is really important because we went from something squirrely, used wheel around, ends run, and it resolved very quick. And dancers are looking for something that is going to take me from weird to familiar. And the run did it. And wheel around was really strange from there. And yet not really too difficult if they understand the concept of what a wheel around is once you start dancing it. Yeah, you have to teach wheel around thoroughly.
Tim, you said you doubled your size of your club. Over what period of time did that take? And what was the total number of dancers that you got exposed to double that from 2 to 4?
Now, I try to say I wasn't being braggadocious. I went from 2 square to 4 square in this 15-week period that I did. I just did a cycle. I just went through this cycle on a Monday night group. Mainstream. We have a mainstream area. We have plus involved too in the area, but I take them to mainstream. And we've got the Tuesday group that has been working for 15 years. We've done variations of 20 weeks, multi-cycle, all sorts of different variations of this. And we have 80 couples involved. The destination is still mainstream. They have a plus group now, and there's an A1 group now. And they dance. The Tuesday group has gone 15 years. My Tuesday group is 15 years old. No, that's the 80 couple group. Okay? And the Monday group is just now a going on 3 years group. But we've had issues outside of this. We just gained traction this year because we finally found a place or a location where we could dance on a regular basis. We've been having trouble being able to maintain a room and the night of the week of dancing. Anytime we make a change like that, you almost lose half your crowd. So now we're gaining traction again.
And Tim's in a gated community, so he has the hall availability there. So like on the Mondays, that was his niche where he's having problems of getting the same place, and he would lose a place and so forth like that. The Tuesday group, been going on so much longer, already has a place. It's also a gated community as well, so it has a place to dance. Okay, so anyhow.
Oh, and this is not the only ones documented. The group in Toronto just had a session like this,
yes.
And they went. They did go a little longer because they had people missing, and I think they went almost 15 to 20 weeks because and started another group. What they really liked was the ability to have multiple times to bring in new people, and they did have success. And I know a group in Northern Virginia that is doing it, and when we sent them the updated material, they were very elated and have had success. Elmer Sheffield had a group down in the Tallahassee area, and he went from like 4 couples to 10 squares in probably a 2-year period by doing these condensed orders.
Yes.
13 sets?
Okay.
Squares.
Roger Smith, Santa Clara, California. So when you put these things together, do you have new dancer hoedowns for these people at a special time? They've been working on our area just the reverse type of thing, trying to add plus items to some of this stuff. And I think they've added 8 plus items to some basic and mainstream stuff. And we went to a dance, and we ended up with January level dancers there, and they couldn't dance what they were calling. And I just wondered if you guys basically are still calling basic and mainstream stuff, so you probably don't have that problem, but you still do newer dance or hoedowns.
Bill.
Honestly, I hope this doesn't sound harsh, but until we, us, you, everyone, take control, it's not going to matter. I have a group at home. Our destination in our area is Plus, and the group wanted to have them at a certain place at a certain time. And I have a colleague who works with me, and we said, no, when they're finished, they're finished.
Be ready.
They'll be ready. Well, what do we do about graduation? Do it tomorrow. Who cares? But you have to get your club involved to back what you want to do. Now, let me tell you, it wasn't easy to get that across. It really was not. Is the destination still Plus? Sadly to say, it is. It really shouldn't be because of the makeup of the club. The club is one of those clubs, it's a family-oriented club. They have people who come in, they miss. You might see them 1 month. You might see them 3 months later, that kind of a thing. But they can't go anywhere in the area to Dance Plus. So that's why they want to be Plus. The other downfall is they don't go anywhere anyhow. But, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. My point is that that's what they want to do. They want to be like everybody else, okay? So how do you take control? You say, well, teach the new people, and when they're finished, they'll be finished. If it takes 10 weeks, 5 weeks, 30 weeks, whatever. So I guess the logic of all of this is that we here have to take control back again, and we have to make it happen. So in that situation there, I'm not sure why the newer people were showing up at a dance like that to begin with, in all honesty. I mean,
Mike Seastrom said it best, and I see Mike in the back, but Mike Seastrom said it best.
Mike.
Our first branch on the tree is too high right now. The first branch to join our activity is too high. People can't jump up to get to that first run. Okay? We lower the branch, have it in 12 weeks, they get involved in it, and they're hooked. Now they're not coming up to us and asking, how long are the lessons? They now are knowing that they are dancers, and they dance every week. And that's it. It's like, how long do you want to continue to dance? That's there's no answer to that. There's no lessons. At the end of the 12 weeks, you're joining the club, you're integrated, and you're just going to dance and have fun. We'll teach you these other things as you go, and everybody accepts that in our group. And there's no need for a hoedown party because every week's now entertainment and party, and you have to make it fun, singing calls and the likes.
I've got a question. Naaman Morehouse from Grand Junction, Colorado. How many hours do you teach on a lesson?
Yeah, that's a great question. Defined in the session in the principal paper, it says a minimum of 2 hours, a session of 2 hours. Hour and a half to 2 hours would be ideal.
I have a class going right now, and in my area, 17 people in a class is pretty good. Yeah, and we have an hour and a half. And we're at our 13th week right now, and we've gone over about 80% of what you've got here, but in an hour and a half, and we're going to go to 20 weeks on our lessons.
Good, and it can be done in that time frame.
Absolutely.
If you have committed people. If you have folks who have missed 2-3 weeks, it takes a longer time to review because
Yes.
you've got to get them caught up.
and I believe anybody who's teaching that's sitting here today would probably most likely say that an hour and a half is about the time. We have 2-hour sessions, but the one group I just mentioned, it's an hour and a half. So that's their learning process. But they have it on the same night as the club. See, and then the club dances there afterwards. So they're all mixed together. But hour and a half, even a standalone away from the club, if you have 2-hour sessions, normally you teach an hour and a half, and the last half hour you just let them dance and have fun.
We have 15 minutes left. And we'd like to take a lot of questions and comments and
Yes.
things. prefer the questions because comments can sometimes take lengthy amount of times. But we have supportive documentation here. You have the thumb drive, the materials here. The thing is, the question that we have is, what more do you need? What more would you like? Is there something missing that we haven't provided you? If you think that there is something missing, let us know, and we can put that together and add it to the documentation of this to improve the product.
Jim Osborne, San Francisco Bay Area. I would ask you that are well-known callers nationally to write things for dancers indicating why this is a good thing. I just recently, less than a year ago, touting this basic idea, got fired. Because if you can't teach people how to dance plus in about 9 months, no matter what happens, you must be an idiot. And here I am. I'm an idiot. But articles by well-known people in dancer magazines, because I see a whole lot of totally uninformed dancer club leaders that you can't deal with. You know, if people don't know something, they probably can't know something.
This condensed teach order principle might be too big of an article, but that's the start of it that you have, and it might answer some of those questions as to why to do it and what have you. So hopefully, and I agree, I put that suggestion down, and we can certainly try to find leaders to do that.
Joe Gonzalez, Clovis, California. So you keep them at mainstream, and do you teach them plus, or you keep them at mainstream level?
Yeah, I don't keep them anywhere. I entertain them, and I'm not trying to be a jerk up here. What I'm saying is, if they want to learn plus and they feel proficient enough, they'll probably go somewhere where somebody will teach them plus. I don't. I teach them mainstream, and we're dancing mainstream. Later, after a year's time or 2 years, it will be provided, and I will have a plus session. And if they're not ready to do it, I, as the leader, will go up to them and say, guys, I think you guys still need a little more practice at what we're doing, you know, the enjoyment of what we're doing this, so you really feel comfortable it before you move on. Okay? But we don't do that. We've got groups now want to cherry pick and say, I just need these folks because we need bodies, and they'll take anybody no matter how proficient they are.
Virgil Forbes from Maryland. 2 things, maybe 3. And I would agree that we need articles, even a short column signed by very well-known national callers, one of whom is right here behind me, in ASD, in national squares, saying not necessarily the details of this, but insisting that a shorter teach session, a less complex entry program is the only way we're going to save square dancing. Maybe that's overstating the case, but I don't think so. But to have a Tim Marriner, a Bill Harrison, a John Marshall, a Marshall Flip, take your pick of names. Anybody who's got a 50-year pin from this organization is going to carry some weight, and we need that to convince the local dance leaders. That's number 1. Number 2, we need something like this in place of the basic program at the national convention, so that they have someplace, you know, if they want to go to nationals, there will be a full period hall where they can dance this very interesting choreographic program. Number 3, and I think this is probably a little farther out, is to have potentially CALLERLAB recognize this as a destination program called square dancing. Yeah. What a neat concept. I don't think it's going to happen this year. Okay, but that's, we need dancer acceptance in our local areas at our local festivals.
Yes.
For this kind of less complex but still very interesting program.
Virgil, I understand, and I hear the first item, and I totally agree with the first item. Item number 2 probably won't happen until it gains some sort of national recognition that this is everyone's trying to do this and they like it, and I don't see that happening personally. Now, item 3, again, as far as what was that again? Refresh me, because I got 2. Oh, yeah, CALLERLAB are recognizing it. CALLERLAB already has recognized that this is a unique teach approach. It's not a program. This is not a standalone new program. Please don't call it a program. It is a teach method. And it's a way to get you involved and new people involved in a quicker amount of time. That's all we're doing. And should, as a result of this, the basics decide they need to modify their programs, or mainstream should want to modify these programs. These are great side effects if more people are doing this. That's all.
Tim, Gary Felton from Maryland again. We don't need someone to tell our dancers that this will save square dancing, because that's preaching to them. But if we tell them that this is a success that's doubled ours, that's given us 13 squares, we need the success story part for publicity rather than a sermon.
And remember that the teach order was to emulate what we actually call normally ourselves at a mainstream dance or what have you. So that was the beauty of trying to put this together. So that's the other aspect of this. It makes them feel like they're already dancing what we call mainstream without the other 19 calls. This was what really was our goal. And and I do see that that's what I'm hearing here when people are looking at it going, wow. So that was quite interesting.
To jump in, THARS, for example, these are circle dance actions. They're very fundamental. They're very dance actions. They're very demo-worthy actions. I'm not saying that we don't need THARS, but they're less danced, and they're not the meat and potatoes of what we do the most. That's all.
Don Beck, Massachusetts. It appears to me that you're trying to provide a 12-week program to get non-dancers to become comfortable, fun people that can dance what we call square dancing in a regular basis comfortably. My question to you is, why do you feel the need to make them competent all-position dancers? Why do you feel that the techniques you learned of larger to smaller, why not use the standard formations and let them dance those, because you can get them all there much more quickly in dancing and accomplish your objective that way?
Because basically at the very bottom of our basic mainstream list that we have today currently, at the very, very bottom, CALLERLAB states that that all of these calls should be taught from more than one place. We're not seeing that. Well, I wonder if we did see it more often, would we be where we are today? I'm not sure. I can't answer that. But if I can give people more variety with this, they may not feel a need to move anywhere, okay? Like up the ladder or whatever the case may be.
And if I could answer also, Don, some of the dance actions we're not taking to the nth degree. I'm not saying that we need to be doing grand square with the head stepping into the middle and turning and looking at their partners and sides face grand square. We're not doing that. We're taking more of a standard approach, but then teaching it thoroughly enough so that they can swing through with 4 boys, so that they can do a boy-boy, girl-girl swing through and understand the concept. And I think if we're teaching concepts rather than position dancing, that's different than DBD.
I feel that calls like swing through, once you've taught it, you don't have to worry about he, she, or what have you. That, trade by the right, centers trade by the left. That's it. But calls like square through, I don't see any need for teaching it half sashayed. I don't see any need for teaching it left-handed. You teach I feel the version that you use 99% of the time. When you teach it, you don't limit your definitions so it eliminates these others. and you can use these others for workshop ideas later. But condense your teaching, give them less material so they can get to this 12-week level more easily, more comfortable, more entertaining, less teaching.
We can certainly take that into consideration.
Yeah.
I understand that. We've not had any trouble with the dancers understanding the concept of what the square is and how to do it from either side, boy, girl, girl, boy, sashayed or left.
Yes, that's. I don't know where to really answer that one because I don't have that problem. I mean, I can teach. I know it's a nice one to pick. It is. It's a great one because I've seen over the years where somebody would teach square through, and then maybe the next week they'll have them half sachet and reteach the call all over again, like nobody ever heard it before. And then the next week I've seen them when they had 4 boys in the middle teach the call all over again, like they've never heard it before. I teach it one time, and then I go to all these places, and no one's looking at me like, well, you never showed me how to do it. They understand how to do it. Maybe it's the way I do it. Okay? So, and this has been going for 15, 20 years. I've never had a problem. So, I mean, I guess that's where we're kind of going. Yeah.
More questions? Any more? Please. We're about winding up to the end of what our allotted time. A lot of hours went into this with the ad hoc group, and Bill and myself included. But it provides you with what we feel is something that you should be able to take home and digest, read, see if it works for you. This is not the answer for everybody. Mm-hmm. If your teaching method works currently and you're having success, don't change it. Don't fix something that's not broken. Okay? But if you're seeing a decline in retention rates and numbers and you're not gaining any success and you continue on the same path and continue to teach the same method and way, this is an alternative we'd like for you to think about. And we have supportive documentation that will help assist that. Okay? Yeah, we're about that. We have the last question. We have time.
This is a suggestion and a set of ideas. Doesn't mean it's absolutely perfect, and it, of course, could be subject to change if somebody could come up with a good reason. It's not cast in stone at this point. It's, here's our idea.
Again, it's going to be added. It's going to be put on the website. You'll be able to go to it and get all the associated materials with it.
Yes, it's available for everybody. So we thank you very much for coming. Nice hand, Mr. Tim Marriner.
And please give it up to Bill Harrison for all his assistance and help as well. Yeah. Thank you all. Make something happen, guys. Go out and do it, will you?
Make something happen.
Thanks for coming. Again, you have a thumb drive with all this material on it.
There are still hard copies up here if you're interested. Please watch the cords. That's all we ask.